Useless moralist, Donald Trump sneered, his eyes glinting with a mix of amusement and menace. Jasmine Crockett stood frozen for a heartbeat, then tightened her grip on the stack of files that could expose over 37 incidents of corruption and abuse of power. In this very room, with cameras rolling and millions watching live, every word, every glance could change the course of justice or destroy it. Trump leaned back, smirking, as if daring her to fail, while Jasmine's mind raced through the evidence. The witnesses, the stories of thousands of lives affected by greed and injustice. This wasn't just a hearing, it was a battlefield where ideals clashed with raw power, and only one could emerge unbroken. The doors of the hearing room swung open, echoing like the first gunshot of a war no one had dared predict. Jasmine Crockett strode in, every step deliberate, a steel resolve in her gaze. The stack of documents in her hands wasn't just paper, it was evidence, truth waiting to ignite. Cameras flashed, the murmurs of journalists and the shuffle of chairs creating a tense symphony that filled the room. Donald Trump didn't rise. He didn't need to. He leaned back, a grin curling at the corners of his mouth, his eyes narrowing into slits of mockery. "Here she comes," he drawled, his voice dripping with scorn. "Little Miss Justice for All thinks she can lecture me in my own domain?" The words hung in the air, a provocation sharpened like a blade. Every journalist in the room paused mid-note, sensing the storm ready to break. Jasmine's jaw tightened, her voice, calm but edged with ice, sliced through the tension. "I'm not here to lecture, Mr. Trump. I'm here to show the truth, and everyone will see it, whether you like it or not." A low murmur rippled through the room, but Trump only chuckled, leaning forward, his fingers steepled. "The truth? You call this truth? I've built an empire while you were still learning how to speak in public. Don't make me laugh." He paused, eyes flicking over her like a predator sizing up its prey. Jasmine's hands gripped the files tighter, the paper crumpling slightly under her knuckles. The room felt charged, electric, every heartbeat amplified. "Laugh all you want," Jasmine shot back, stepping closer, her presence commanding the floor. "Because when the world sees what you've done, no empire, no money, no title will protect you." The tension snapped like a taut wire. Some members of the committee moved forward instinctively, murmuring cautions, but no one could stop the eruption that had begun. Trump leaned back, mock indignation plastered on his face, and Jasmine held her ground, unwavering, every muscle taut with purpose. Journalists scribbled furiously, their pens racing to keep up with the storm. The air felt thick, almost suffocating, as if the room itself had taken a side. Trump smirked, a slow, deliberate smile meant to provoke, while Jasmine's stare burned into him, unyielding and resolute. "You really think waving those papers around scares me?" Trump sneered. "I've survived investigations, scandals, and betrayals far worse than anything you've got in that little stack." Jasmine's eyes flared. "Survived? Or avoided accountability? There's a difference, and soon the world will see it clearly." For a tense heartbeat, the room held its collective breath. Every whispered exchange, every sideways glance, every subtle gesture contributed to the crescendo building between them. The committee members' attempts to moderate the situation felt laughable against the force of two wills colliding, each as unyielding as the other. Trump's voice rose, dripping with derision. "You think you can change anything in here, Crockett? You're just a small spark in a room of flames." Jasmine leaned slightly forward, her voice steady but cutting. "Even a small spark can ignite a fire you'll never control." The words landed like gunfire. Cameras zoomed in on the tension, capturing every twitch, every flare of emotion. Viewers at home, millions across the country, felt the weight of the moment, the drama, the undeniable clash of justice versus power. And in that electric instant, the world knew. This wasn't just a courtroom. This was a battlefield, and Jasmine Crockett had come to fight. If you want to witness every twist, every clash, and every revelation in this epic showdown, make sure you subscribe to Harrison Stories, where the truth always finds its voice and justice never rests. The room had barely settled from the initial clash when Jasmine Crockett took her first step toward the heart of the hearing. Cameras focused on her every move, every slight tilt of her head, every deliberate pause as she placed the stack of files on the polished oak table before the committee. The papers seemed heavier than ever, each page a weighty accusation, a piece of truth that could crumble empires. Donald Trump leaned back in his chair, a slow, derisive smirk curling across his face. He knew what was coming, yet he wanted to appear untouchable, untamed, like a lion in its cage daring anyone to challenge it. "Let's hear it then," he drawled, voice smooth but dripping with condescension. "Tell us all how I've supposedly failed, little crusader." Jasmine's gaze didn't waver. Her tone was measured but cutting, each word chosen with surgical precision. Over the past decade, multiple agencies have documented more than 37 separate incidents of corruption and abuse of authority, all linked directly to your decisions, Mr. Trump. Today, the world will see what many have tried to hide. A murmur rippled through the room. Committee members exchanged glances, some discreetly leaning forward, trying to catch every syllable. Journalists scribbled furiously, the pen strokes sounding almost like gunfire in the silence that followed her declaration. Trump laughed, a low, unnerving sound that bounced off the high ceilings. "Corruption? Abuse? You really think stacking papers will convince anyone? I've been scrutinized more times than you can count, and here I am, still standing, still winning. And you're just a small voice trying to shout over the crowd." Jasmine's lips pressed into a thin line, her calm a stark contrast to the seething energy radiating from Trump. She leaned forward slightly, letting her voice resonate through the chamber. "Small voice or not, every life affected by your decisions counts. Thousands of Americans, workers, families, and communities have suffered directly because of your choices. And today, their stories are finally being told." Trump's eyes flashed, a predator sensing a worthy prey, but he masked it quickly with amusement. "Thousands, huh? You really think crying over numbers and stories changes anything? Power doesn't bend for morality. It bends for strength. You'll see." The air thickened. Every whispered exchange, every scribbled note, every camera click added to the electric tension. Jasmine pressed on, methodically laying out preliminary allegations, each more precise, more damning than the last. "From questionable contracts to the suppression of investigations, your administration prioritized personal gain over the public good. Evidence shows repeated patterns of deception that cannot be ignored." Trump interrupted sharply, raising his voice just enough to make his disdain audible. "Patterns? Deception? Sounds like someone's been reading too many headlines. You call this evidence? I call it fiction dressed up as a crusade." Jasmine's eyes locked onto his, unwavering, fire beneath the steel of her expression. "Fiction? We'll let the documents, the emails, and the witnesses decide. Today, fiction will have no place in this room. Only facts will speak, and they are loud enough to drown out any lies." Each exchange landed like a precision strike, every word a mental punch, reverberating through the room, leaving the audience, both live and at home, on edge. Committee members tried to mediate, their attempts futile against the clash of two relentless wills. Trump leaned forward suddenly, his grin sharp, venomous. "You're bold, I'll give you that. But boldness without experience is just reckless. Be careful, Miss Crockett. Some truths are dangerous in ways you can't imagine." Jasmine's hand rested firmly on the files. Her voice, unwavering and sharp, carried across the chamber. "Dangerous truths are the only ones worth telling, and I'm ready to face whatever comes next." A tense silence followed. Every eye in the room, every camera lens, every soul listening from across the country felt the weight of what was happening. Jasmine's courage radiated outward like a flare, challenging Trump's dominance, questioning the very foundation of his power. The room seemed to hold its collective breath as the first salvo of the hearing concluded, a delicate balance between chaos and control, power and morality. Jasmine had set the battlefield. Trump had accepted the challenge. The war of ideals versus authority had officially begun. And as the murmurs swelled and the camera lights flickered, viewers across the nation were drawn deeper into the unfolding story, unable to look away from the tension crackling between Jasmine Crockett and Donald Trump. A battle that promised to expose everything. And as the murmurs swelled and the camera lights flickered, Jasmine Crockett lifted the first folder with a measured grace, letting the room feel the weight of the moment. Every eye, every lens, every journalist's pen seemed to hold its breath, knowing that what she was about to reveal could shatter the carefully constructed walls of power surrounding Donald Trump. Inside these files, Jasmine began, her voice calm but resolute, are documents, emails, and contracts that detail more than 37 confirmed instances of misconduct, cover-ups, and abuse of authority. And this, she said, holding up a small recorder, is a recording of conversations that expose the decisions made in secret without regard for legality or ethics. The silence in the room was almost unbearable. Trump's smirk faltered just slightly, a flicker of unease that went almost unnoticed, yet it was there. For a brief second, the man who had commanded rooms, boards, and headlines worldwide seemed human, susceptible to shock. This is impossible, Trump stammered, masking his surprise with a forced chuckle. You're spinning tales from whispers and papers. None of this will hold up under scrutiny. Jasmine's eyes didn't leave his. Impossible for you to admit, perhaps, but undeniable for everyone else. This isn't conjecture. These are facts, verified, time-stamped, and witnessed. She began to lay out the evidence systematically, each file a nail in the foundation of Trump's public persona. Emails from executives, internal memos, and financial records formed a mosaic of deception, greed, and abuse. Every page she placed on the table seemed to draw the room into a gravitational pull of shock. Committee members leaned forward, their expressions taut with disbelief and intrigue, while journalists typed furiously, already imagining the headlines that would erupt from this hearing. Trump's composure wavered as Jasmine pressed play on the recording, the room filled with the unmistakable tone of his own voice, candid and unguarded, discussing decisions that had put countless lives at risk. He inhaled sharply, a human moment breaking through the armor of confidence he had cultivated over decades. That was taken out of context, Trump barked, raising his voice, trying to regain control. This is selective editing manipulation. You can't present this as the whole story. Jasmine tilted her head, letting her words land like measured strikes. Selective or not, Mr. Trump, these are the choices made under your leadership. Every action, every decision, every instruction captured here paints a clear picture. The world will see it, and justice will follow. The shockwave through the room was palpable. Gasps, whispers, and the soft clatter of pens filled the tense air. Camera shutters clicked rapidly, capturing the moment for millions watching live. Even members of the committee, hardened by years of politics, exchanged incredulous looks, struggling to reconcile the man before them with the revelations being presented. Trump's face flushed, a mixture of anger and disbelief, yet he forced a laugh, sharp and hollow. You think this is enough to topple me? I've faced scandals that dwarf this, and I've come out stronger every time. This little crusade will fail. But Jasmine's gaze was unwavering. Stronger in public perception, perhaps, but not in truth. Every document, every recording, every witness waiting to testify will unravel the defenses you've built. Power cannot survive when exposed to light. The room held its collective breath as she continued, each word a precise, deliberate blow. The tension was electric, a storm barely contained within the walls of the chamber. The whispers of journalists became urgent typing. The committee members' expressions hardened with a mix of awe and apprehension. Trump leaned forward suddenly, eyes darting between Jasmine and the evidence, his smirk gone. You're reckless, Crockett. Bold, but reckless. You don't know what you're dealing with. Jasmine's lips curved into a slight, cold smile. I know exactly what I'm dealing with, Mr. Trump, and so does everyone watching. For the first time in the hearing, the balance shifted. The audience felt it. The cameras captured it. Even Trump could not entirely mask it. The empire of bravado, carefully curated over years, had been punctured, if only slightly, by undeniable evidence laid bare in the glare of scrutiny. And as the committee absorbed the revelations and journalists prepared to broadcast the shock across the nation, the stage was set. Jasmine had gained the upper hand, but the war was far from over. The next moves would be decisive, explosive, and impossible to predict. Every viewer, whether in the chamber or watching from home, knew one thing. The tide had shifted, and the story was only beginning to unravel. Donald Trump's grin faltered for barely a heartbeat, but it was enough. His eyes hardened, and the room felt the subtle shift in energy, the predator's instinct kicking in, calculating, searching for weakness. Then he leaned forward, voice sharp and deliberate, cutting through the charged air. "You think you're clever, Crockett," he said, voice heavy with venom. "Parading documents and recordings doesn't make you brave. It makes you predictable. Your father couldn't teach you caution. Your past, your family, are full of mistakes, little crusader. Are you ready to have them exposed along with you?" The chamber went still. Even the most composed journalists froze mid-scribble. The attack was personal, vicious, designed to shake her, to make her flinch, to turn courage into doubt. Jasmine Crockett did not flinch. Her gaze locked on his, steel meeting fire, unwavering. She inhaled slowly, letting the weight of the moment settle into the room, before responding with calm precision. "My family, my past, my upbringing, none of them have ever dictated the truth I stand for," Jasmine said, voice low but resonant. "And if you think attacking my character will deflect from your actions, you've already lost before you opened your mouth." Trump's grin twisted, a flash of irritation breaking through the carefully constructed mask of amusement. Bold words. Do you really think a courtroom cares about moral high ground when history judges strength? People respect winners, Crockett, not idealists. Jasmine's lips pressed into a thin line, her mind racing through years of preparation, months of evidence gathering, and the faces of countless people affected by greed and corruption. Strength without integrity is hollow. Winners without accountability are tyrants. And history? History doesn't forgive those who abuse power, no matter how loud they scream in their own defense. The room held its collective breath. Every subtle shift, the tap of a pen, the quiet shuffle of papers, the deliberate pause between sentences, amplified the tension. Trump, sensing the escalation, leaned back momentarily, then forward again, voice rising in controlled fury. "You think your words are sharp enough to wound me?" he snapped. "I've dealt with accusations, scandals, betrayals far beyond what your little crusade can muster. You're dangerous in your naivety, Crockett. Dangerous and unprepared." Jasmine's eyes narrowed, but her posture did not waver. "Dangerous, yes. Unprepared? Never. Every word I speak, every document I present, every witness ready to testify has been scrutinized, verified, and strengthened. You cannot intimidate the truth, Mr. Trump. You can only delay its arrival." The clash of wills ignited a storm in the chamber. Trump's laughter, sharp, forced, defensive, bounced against the walls, but Jasmine's calm, measured words sliced through it, slicing doubt from fear. Each statement she made landed like a strike, precise, deliberate, unyielding. Committee members leaned forward, some clutching their notes, others whispering to colleagues, but all captivated by the duel unraveling before them. Journalists Orashawa's pens raced to keep up. Cameras zoomed in, capturing every flicker of emotion, every subtle tightening of jaw or narrowing of eyes. Trump raised his voice one last time, venom coating every word. "Idealists like you always fall apart under pressure, Crockett. History will show. This is nothing more than a naive performance." Jasmine's hand rested lightly on the files, the other gesturing ever so slightly toward him. Her voice, calm and unwavering, carried the weight of certainty across the room. "Naive? Perhaps you underestimate the power of preparation, justice, and courage. I am not performing, Mr. Trump. I am confronting reality, and history is already watching." The chamber vibrated with tension, every attendee feeling the collision of raw power against unyielding principle. Trump had thrown his most personal attacks. Jasmine had responded with intellect, courage, and moral clarity. The room seemed to pulse with the rhythm of battle, each word a heartbeat, each glance a spark threatening to ignite a larger fire. And as the first wave of exchanges settled, the audience, both in the room and across the nation, felt the undeniable truth. Jasmine Crockett was no ordinary opponent. She was a force of conviction, a living counterweight to raw ambition, and her presence alone was a challenge Trump could not easily dismiss. For those captivated by this epic confrontation, eager to see the next move, the next revelation, the next strike in this relentless battle, make sure to subscribe to Harrison Stories, where every truth is revealed, every clash matters, and justice always finds its voice. Just as the room seemed to pulse with the aftermath of Jasmine's latest strikes, the chamber doors opened quietly but with undeniable authority. Every head turned, every camera swiveled. A figure entered, a witness previously unknown to the public, whose testimony promised to shatter assumptions and force the truth into the light. "I am here to testify," the witness said, voice calm yet commanding. "What I know has never been revealed, and it changes the story completely." A collective gasp swept through the room. Committee members leaned forward, pens poised, journalists' cameras zoomed in, and even Trump's smug expression faltered, just slightly, a crack in the wall of his confidence. Jasmine's eyes shone, recognizing the moment she had been waiting for, the unexpected ally who could tip the scales irreversibly in favor of justice. Trump's smile tightened, a flicker of calculation crossing his face. "Now who do we have here?" he sneered. "More stories, more lies? You think this will turn the tide?" Jasmine's gaze met his with unyielding resolve. "This is not a story. These are verified facts, and they expose decisions made in secrecy, decisions with real consequences." The witness began, detailing confidential memos, private meetings, and covert instructions. Decisions that affected thousands, each revelation corroborated with documents Jasmine had previously presented. Every disclosure landed like a precise blow, a fracture in the carefully constructed narrative Trump had maintained. Trump leaned forward, voice rising, trying to regain control. "These claims, fabricated. This witness is part of a scheme. None of this is credible." Jasmine's response was immediate, sharp, and unwavering. "Fabricated? Every word is corroborated by evidence, emails, and recordings. Attempts to intimidate the witness or discredit the facts will fail. The truth does not bend to threats or bluster." The tension in the room was palpable. Committee members whispered urgently, journalists scribbled furiously, and the air seemed to thrum with suspense. Every revelation increased the pressure on Trump. His calculated confidence wavered, replaced by a flicker of panic beneath the surface. The witness disclosed a final, damning piece of evidence, a covert directive from Trump's office that had directly led to widespread consequences, actions previously hidden, unknown even to the public and media. Gasps echoed across the chamber. Every eye was riveted, every pen racing, every camera capturing the shock and disbelief. Trump's jaw tightened, hands gripping the table. "This is absurd, lies, you're fabricating everything," he snapped, his voice sharp but strained. Jasmine leaned forward, calm and resolute, letting her words settle like a hammer. "The proof is here, Mr. Trump. Every document, every witness, every recorded statement confirms the reality. Power cannot hide from accountability, and truth will prevail." The room seemed to hold its collective breath, suspended between revelation and retaliation. Trump's usual dominance faltered. The witness had changed the battlefield. Jasmine had seized control, using this pivotal moment to expose a truth too large to ignore, shifting the momentum definitively. As the details settled and the room absorbed the magnitude of what had been revealed, it became clear. This was no longer just a confrontation. The unexpected witness had transformed the hearing into a reckoning. Trump was on the defensive, Jasmine was in command, and the tension crackling in the chamber made it impossible to look away. The stakes had never been higher. The story had taken an irreversible turn. Jasmine Crockett sat forward, her fingers lightly tracing the edges of the evidence spread before her. Graphs, emails, recordings, and witness statements formed a labyrinth of facts, each meticulously verified, each interconnected. She did not merely present information, she wielded it, calculating each move like a grandmaster in a chess match, anticipating every possible reaction from the man across the table. Donald Trump leaned back, eyes narrowed, lips curling into a forced, self-assured grin. Clever little strategy, Crockett, he sneered, voice dripping with mockery. But all the data in the world won't cover up perception. People respect strength, not long-winded analyses. Jasmine's gaze remained unwavering. Perception is fleeting, Mr. Trump. Facts, however, endure. And the evidence here doesn't leave room for interpretation or spin. Every decision you made, every directive you issued is mapped, time-stamped, and witnessed. Trump's smirk faltered ever so slightly. He cleared his throat, leaning forward with theatrical confidence. Facts, you say? I've built an empire on dealing with facts, and I've navigated scandals far greater than this. You underestimate me. But Jasmine had anticipated this. With deliberate calm, she began to walk the committee through the timeline, linking correspondence to recorded directives, highlighting inconsistencies, and methodically dismantling the narrative Trump had tried to maintain. Every point she made was a calculated strike, designed not merely to challenge, but to corner. Trump's voice rose, a blend of bravado and veiled panic. You're twisting context, selective evidence. I've faced investigations before, Crockett, and emerged stronger every time. Jasmine's eyes flicked to him, sharp and unyielding. Emerging stronger is irrelevant when accountability is inescapable. Each document here tells a story you cannot deny. Every witness corroborates it. Every timeline aligns perfectly with the facts. The chamber seemed to shrink with the intensity of the confrontation. Each member of the committee leaned in, silently weighing each word. Journalists' pens moved frantically across notepads. Cameras pivoted for the perfect angle, capturing micro-expressions that betrayed fear, frustration, or disbelief. Trump slammed a fist lightly on the table, attempting to regain command of the room. This is theatrics. You think layering details will intimidate me? I've faced far bigger storms than this. Jasmine didn't flinch. Instead, she used his momentum against him, presenting a cross-section of emails and witness statements that directly contradicted his prior assertions. Her voice was calm, precise, almost surgical. Storms, perhaps, but storms without accountability leave devastation in their wake. And history, Mr. Trump, will remember the truth far longer than it will remember your theatrics. A bead of sweat traced the side of Trump's temple. He tried to interject, to launch another verbal offensive, but Jasmine anticipated every deflection. Each point she made was supported by multiple layers of evidence, creating a net from which escape seemed impossible. The mental chess match escalated. Trump deployed every rhetorical tactic he could muster, appeals to loyalty, veiled threats, feigned confidence. Yet with each tactic, Jasmine countered with logic, clarity, and precision, exposing cracks in his statements and creating pressure points that made his responses increasingly erratic. The chamber was silent except for the measured cadence of Jasmine's explanations, the occasional sharp interjection from Trump, and the subtle hum of reporters typing feverishly. Each micro-movement, each pause, each word carried weight, like chess pieces in a game where one mistake could determine the victor. Trump leaned forward, voice sharp, eyes darting between documents, witnesses, and Jasmine herself. You think this is enough to corner me? My supporters, my influence, my networks, none of this analysis changes perception. Jasmine's gaze was unflinching. Perception shifts when truth is undeniable. Networks, influence, supporters, they matter little when the facts stand against you. And the facts here do not bend to intimidation, theatrics, or bravado. A tense hush fell over the room. It was as if the chamber itself held its breath, waiting for the next move. Each second stretched. Each glance became loaded with unspoken calculation. Trump's carefully constructed aura of control was fraying, exposing a vulnerability he rarely revealed publicly. And yet, in the midst of chaos, Jasmine remained the anchor. Her composure, intellect, and strategic precision dominated the room. Every move, every word, every pause was deliberate, designed to tighten the net, to escalate pressure without losing control. The battle was no longer just about evidence. It was a test of will, intellect, and endurance. As the session continued, it became clear. This was not merely a hearing. It was a contest of minds, a high-stakes duel where every misstep could be fatal. Trump had tried to assert dominance through bluster, yet Jasmine's strategic deployment of facts and logic had shifted the balance. The game board was hers to command, and the next moves would determine the trajectory of power, perception, and justice. In that moment, the audience, both in the chamber and watching from home, felt the electric tension. Every word, every gesture, every nuance mattered. The trap was tightening, and the mind game had reached a level where intellect, courage, and strategy alone could decide the outcome. The chessboard was set, and in this high-stakes battle of wits, Jasmine Crockett held the advantage. Trump leaned forward, eyes locked on Jasmine, a mixture of irritation and disbelief flashing across his features. "You really think you've outmaneuvered me, Crockett?" he spat, voice low and sharp. "All these facts, these witnesses, do you really believe they can bring me down? You're playing a game far too big for your boots." Jasmine's gaze was unwavering, steel meeting fire. "I don't believe, Mr. Trump. I know. Every document, every testimony, every timeline has been verified. The truth is not about belief, it's about proof, and proof doesn't cower." The room seemed to tighten around them. Each word they exchanged carried weight, each glance a challenge. Trump's hand slammed lightly on the table, an attempt to assert dominance. Yet the motion only emphasized the tension between them. The committee leaned forward, journalists adjusted lenses, and every eye in the chamber was riveted. "You're aggressive," Trump hissed, a forced grin curving his lips. "Too aggressive. Idealism like yours is dangerous, but naive. You have no idea the forces you're up against." Jasmine leaned slightly closer, her voice calm, precise, but every syllable resonating like a strike. "Dangerous? Perhaps. Naive? Never. The forces you wield have power only when left unchecked. And unchecked power breeds corruption, Mr. Trump. It is the duty of those with integrity to expose it." Trump's eyes narrowed. He leaned back, then forward again, a storm of emotions behind the carefully crafted mask of composure. "Integrity doesn't win battles, Crockett. Influence wins battles. Fear wins battles. And you, with all your research, all your evidence, you can't intimidate me because I've survived worse storms than this." Jasmine's lips pressed into a thin line, but her hands moved deftly, pointing to exhibits, highlighting connections, forcing the undeniable truth into plain sight. Surviving storms doesn't absolve one of responsibility, and strength without accountability is hollow. Every action you've taken leaves a mark, proof that can't be erased, that can't be spun. The more you resist, the clearer the story becomes. Trump's voice rose, sharp, almost trembling beneath the bravado. "You think your timelines, your witnesses, your files, they scare me? They are pieces, Crockett. Pieces of a puzzle that doesn't make the picture you want it to. You can't corner me." Jasmine didn't blink. Each word was measured, each pause deliberate. "Cornered? Perhaps. But even kings stumble when the board is balanced against deception, and right now the balance is shifting. Every lie, every attempt to deflect, every intimidation fails when exposed to scrutiny." The chamber's energy reached a fever pitch. Each retort, each flick of an eye, each subtle gesture seemed magnified. Trump's usual dominance was cracking. His confidence, once unshakable, now showed hairline fractures. Jasmine, in contrast, radiated a composed fury, her intellect and courage intertwining to dominate the verbal battlefield. "You're relentless," Trump growled, leaning forward, fingers gripping the table, voice rising. "Do you even understand the consequences of challenging me like this? Do you understand what's at stake?" "I do," Jasmine replied, her voice firm, unyielding. "And what's at stake is not me, not you. It's justice. Every person affected by corruption deserves truth. Every misused authority demands accountability. That is what drives me, and that is what will guide this process to its conclusion." Trump slammed his hands on the table, rising slightly from his chair, the air vibrating with his effort to dominate, to intimidate, to regain lost control. "You think this audience, this committee, the public, they'll all turn against me because of your theatrics? You're dreaming, Crockett." Jasmine's eyes bore into his, unwavering. "Not theatrics, Mr. Trump. Strategy, evidence, principle. And the public sees more than theatrics. They see truth. They see courage. And they will remember it long after this room empties. Tension in the chamber became almost tangible, a storm contained in walls and polished wood. Every subtle twitch, every inhalation, every slight shift of weight carried meaning. Each statement was a calculated strike, each counterpoint a trap. The duel had become a tempest of intellect, willpower, and precision. The committee members and journalists were caught in the whirlwind, hanging on every word, every glance, every movement. The battle was no longer just about legal strategy or evidence. It was a contest of endurance, wit, and moral authority. Each misstep, each hesitation could tilt the balance irreversibly. And in that moment, one undeniable truth crystallized. Jasmine Crockett and Donald Trump were locked in a confrontation where every second mattered, every word was a weapon, and the outcome rested on intellect, courage, and an unyielding pursuit of justice. The room pulsed with energy, the verbal storm unrelenting, and the audience, both inside the chamber and watching across the nation, could feel the electricity in every exchange. The apex of tension had been reached, and no one could predict which move would decide the next turn in this epic struggle. Trump's eyes darted across the chamber, calculating, searching for an opening, a foothold. Then, with a sudden flicker of smirk and practiced bravado, he leaned back and spoke to the cameras strategically positioned around the room. "Let me make one thing clear," he began, projecting confidence for the audience beyond the walls. "These proceedings are nothing but a show, orchestrated by those who don't understand real leadership. They're trying to rewrite history with selected facts and skewed narratives." The murmurs in the chamber rose instantly. Committee members exchanged quick glances. Reporters leaned in, sensing the subtle manipulation. Outside, television screens lit up across the nation. Tweets were drafted, headlines primed, and social media chatter exploded. Trump had initiated his diversion, his signature move of controlling perception, of bending attention away from the evidence piled against him. But Jasmine Crockett was unshaken. She adjusted her posture, allowing the momentary chaos to pass, before delivering her response with calm precision. "Mr. Trump, the only thing orchestrated here is the pursuit of truth," she said, her voice carrying the weight of certainty. "Attempts to manipulate public perception cannot erase documented facts, recorded statements, or the testimony of those who lived the consequences of your actions." Trump's fingers drummed on the polished wood of the table. His eyes narrowed, a flash of frustration breaking through the mask of calculated confidence. "Perception drives reality, Crockett," he said, leaning forward. "Facts don't matter if the public believes otherwise. You think evidence alone will sway the court of opinion?" "You're naive." Jasmine's eyes didn't waver. She countered swiftly, guiding the committee and the cameras back to the mounting evidence. "Perception without accountability is fleeting, Mr. Trump. History favors those who act with integrity, not those who shout the loudest or deflect the longest. The public may be swayed temporarily, but truth has longevity, and the truth here is undeniable." The room seemed to vibrate with tension. Every camera lens captured the subtle micro-expressions. Trump's jaw tightening, his grin faltering for just a fraction of a second, and Jasmine's composed, unwavering gaze. Journalists typed furiously, the narrative unfolding live before their eyes, the chamber itself charged with suspense. Trump's voice escalated, a mixture of defiance and strain. "You think pointing to documents and timelines makes you strong? Influence, Crockett, networks, loyalty. They outweigh facts. I've survived media storms, scandals, attacks far worse than this." Jasmine leaned forward slightly, her words deliberate, surgical. "Survival does not equal absolution. Every action, every directive, every decision leaves traces. Attempts to manipulate narrative cannot erase reality. You may control the noise, but you cannot control the evidence, nor can you erase the human impact of your actions." The tension became almost unbearable. Every observer, whether in the chamber or across the nation, felt the electric pull of the confrontation. Trump's diversion had ignited chaos in perception, but Jasmine's precise counters recentered the focus on accountability, shifting momentum back in her favor. "You underestimate the power of fear, Crockett," Trump said. a slight quaver betraying his mounting pressure. People fear consequences. People fear change. Your idealism is admirable, but insufficient. Jasmine's voice sharpened, each word striking like a measured blow. Fear cannot outweigh justice. Change is inevitable when truth is revealed. Idealism without action is empty, but when paired with evidence, preparation, and courage, it becomes unstoppable. And this room is witnessing that reality. Trump's hands clenched, then loosened, his usual tactics of bluster and intimidation losing their effectiveness. Each attempt to divert attention backfired, highlighting his vulnerability. The chamber had transformed into a battlefield of strategy, intellect, and principle, where even his most calculated maneuvers could be anticipated, countered, and neutralized. The micro-battles continued, a raised eyebrow, a pointed finger, a slow, deliberate clarification. Each action reinforcing Jasmine's control, while Trump's energy increasingly shifted from command to desperation. The game had grown lethal, not in physical terms, but in influence and exposure. One slip, one miscalculated word, could amplify consequences beyond the chamber walls. And yet Jasmine maintained an unbroken rhythm, her composure a stark contrast to the subtle cracks in Trump's facade. Every diversion he attempted, every manipulation of media and perception, was met with a calm, calculated counterstrike, forcing him onto the defensive. The duel of power versus principle had reached a critical juncture. Trump's attempts to sway the narrative began to falter, his focus divided between public perception and the uncompromising evidence in front of him. Jasmine's strategy was clear, methodical, and relentless. Control the facts, dominate the narrative, and leave no room for manipulation. In the charged silence that followed her final point, the room seemed to exhale collectively. The high-stakes battle had shifted decisively. Trump, once confident in his diversions, now appeared to be scrambling, struggling to regain footing, while Jasmine Crockett maintained an unassailable command over both facts and perception. The contest between justice and power had evolved into a living, breathing spectacle. Each exchange was a pulse, each response a heartbeat, and every second held the potential to redefine the outcome of the struggle. The tension was palpable, the stakes absolute, and the path forward uncertain. But one truth was undeniable. Jasmine Crockett had regained the upper hand. Just as the chamber seemed to brace for the next verbal volley, an aide approached Jasmine with a discreet nod and a folder. She opened it slowly, revealing a piece of evidence no one had anticipated. An internal memo, time-stamped, detailing directives that directly contradicted Trump's public statements and prior claims in the hearing. The room froze. Every eye shifted toward the folder as the gravity of the discovery settled like a stone in the air. Trump's expression faltered for the first time in hours. His lips tightened, his confident facade cracking, if only for a fraction of a second. What is that?" he stammered, voice betraying the tremor beneath the bravado. Jasmine's gaze was steady, unwavering, electric in its intensity. "That, Mr. Trump, is the proof we've been building toward," she said, sliding the folder toward the committee and cameras. "It's a record of decisions you've attempted to conceal, instructions that contradict your previous testimony, and actions that cannot be rationalized. It speaks louder than words, louder than claims. It speaks the truth." A hush fell across the chamber. Committee members leaned forward, eyes wide, pens poised. Journalists clicked cameras, capturing every micro-expression, every reaction, the world watching. Trump's hand twitched, brushing against the table as though trying to physically suppress the evidence. But the moment was beyond control. This is fabricated," Trump finally managed, voice tight, almost trembling. "This is a setup. Jasmine cut him off, calm but relentless. "Fabricated? Every signature, every timestamp, every corroborating witness confirms its authenticity. Attempts to deflect or intimidate cannot erase the reality captured in these documents." Trump's grin, once sharp and confident, wavered. His eyes darted around the room, searching for an escape, for an ally, for any distraction to regain footing. But the chamber, the cameras, the committee, and the evidence itself offered no reprieve. He swallowed hard, forcing a laugh that came out hollow. I've faced worse. I've... Not this time, Jasmine interrupted, her tone precise, surgical. Not when the truth is irrefutable, Mr. Trump. Not when the facts are in black and white, undeniable, witnessed and recorded. You can deny it, you can spin it, you can attempt theatrics. But this evidence cannot be ignored, cannot be dismissed, and cannot be rewritten. Trump's hands clenched into fists. His voice rose, controlled fury barely contained. You think this proves anything? You think this changes perception? The people, my supporters, they won't believe it. Jasmine leaned slightly forward, eyes locked on him, unwavering. Supporters may resist, perception may waver, but reality does not. Accountability does not depend on belief. It depends on proof, and the proof is here. You are cornered and you know it. The chamber seemed to shrink with the intensity of the moment. Every subtle twitch, every shallow breath, every micro-expression became amplified under the scrutiny of the committee and the journalists. The public, watching through live feeds, felt the pulse of tension, hearts racing in sync with the unfolding drama. Trump's usual arsenal of bluster and diversion began to crumble. He tried to pivot, throwing out vague accusations, half-formed arguments, and rhetorical flourishes. But Jasmine's eyes and mind tracked every move, countering instantly with logic, evidence, and precision. Each attempt to regain control backfired, revealing further cracks in his facade. "You're relentless," he finally admitted, voice tight, almost whispering, a rare moment of vulnerability. "You're relentless, Crockett. And..." "Yes," Jasmine said softly, yet with undeniable authority. "I am. Because justice cannot be selective. Because accountability cannot be negotiated. Because power without responsibility is a danger, and the people deserve truth. You cannot obscure it any longer." The room held its collective breath. The high-stakes confrontation had reached its pinnacle. Trump's confidence was visibly faltering, his defenses weakening under the weight of irrefutable evidence. Jasmine's control was absolute. Every gesture, every word, every pause designed to tighten the pressure, to push him toward acknowledgement, toward the truth. In that suspended moment, even the most hardened observers sensed the turning point. The tide had shifted decisively. The chamber, the cameras, the witnesses, and the public were all focused on one undeniable fact. Jasmine Crockett had leveraged the unexpected evidence to corner Donald Trump completely, and the next move could change everything. Every heartbeat seemed louder, every glance heavier, every microsecond pregnant with consequence. The apex of tension had been surpassed. The battle was no longer about rhetoric. It was about reality, accountability, and the moment when truth could no longer be denied. The stage was set for the ultimate confrontation. And in that chamber, under the glare of scrutiny, the world waited for the next inevitable strike. Jasmine Crockett rose, her posture impeccable, her expression unwavering. The folder with the revelatory evidence lay open before the committee, a silent testament to the mountain of truth she had meticulously assembled. Cameras focused, lenses capturing every motion, every micro-expression, every subtle gesture. The room seemed to constrict with anticipation. Trump's face was taut, his usual confidence fraying at the edges. He leaned forward, hands gripping the table, eyes darting as if searching for an escape hatch. But Jasmine's gaze locked onto his, cold, precise, unstoppable. "Mr. Trump," she began, her voice clear, measured yet carrying the weight of inevitability. "We have traced every decision, every directive, every statement. We have verified timelines, corroborated witness accounts, and compiled records that leave no room for doubt. What remains is not opinion, not perception. It is irrefutable truth." Trump tried to interrupt, a sharp retort forming on his lips, but Jasmine raised a finger slightly, halting him with effortless authority. "Listen carefully," she continued, her words slicing through the tension, each phrase a strategic strike. "Every attempt to obscure, to manipulate, to intimidate has been documented. Every effort to deflect responsibility has been countered with facts. And the people, the public, the witnesses, and this committee, they all see it now." The chamber was silent. Even the hum of the cameras seemed to pause, the air thick with suspense. Trump's lips twitched as he searched for a foothold, a way to reclaim dominance. But the evidence, the logic, the precision of Jasmine's delivery left him exposed. "You think you can corner me with documents and witnesses?" He finally spat, voice rising with forced defiance. "Influence, power, perception. These are what control reality. Facts alone cannot undo that." Jasmine's eyes never wavered. "Perception may sway temporarily, Mr. Trump," she said, her tone steady, each word resonating like a bell. "But history is guided by truth, and truth is now undeniable. Your influence does not erase accountability, your power does not obscure reality, and your attempts at deception cannot withstand scrutiny." Trump's hands trembled slightly as he gestured wildly, seeking to dominate the chamber with volume and theatrics. "You're idealistic, Crockett. You don't understand the stakes. The networks, the people who support me, they'll never... Stakes are measured not by fear, not by power, not by loyalty misused," Jasmine interjected, cutting through his bluster. "They are measured by consequences, responsibility, and justice. You have had every opportunity to act with integrity, every opportunity to rectify wrongs, and yet here we are, facing the reality of your choices." A bead of sweat traced Trump's temple. He leaned back, momentarily silent, his chest heaving, the carefully maintained veneer of control now fractured. The committee leaned in, the journalists' pens flew across pages, and the audience, both live and watching across the nation, held their collective breath. Jasmine's voice rose slightly, calm but unrelenting. "This is the culmination of every ignored warning, every abused privilege, every instance where truth was sacrificed for power. We are here because actions have consequences, and accountability is inevitable. You cannot deflect. You cannot intimidate. You cannot rewrite what has been documented and verified." Trump's voice cracked as he attempted one final retort, a desperate attempt to regain momentum. "You don't understand. The people, my supporters. Perception?" Jasmine stepped closer, each word deliberate, each pause strategically placed to underscore the weight of reality. "The people, Mr. Trump, will remember not what you shouted, but what you did. They will see not your claims, but the evidence. And when the dust settles, it is the truth that will prevail. Not fear, not influence, not rhetoric. Truth." The room was electric. Every eye was fixed on the two figures locked in this battle of wills. Every gesture, every shift, every inhale carried significance. Trump's defiance faltered, the cracks in his facade widening under the unrelenting pressure of evidence and moral authority. Jasmine's composure, in contrast, radiated absolute control, her intellect and courage converging into a singular force. Minutes stretched like hours. Each word was a calculated blow, each glance a challenge. The finality of the confrontation hung in the air. Trump's defenses had been dismantled piece by piece, his diversions neutralized, his bluster rendered ineffective. The room seemed to pulse with anticipation, sensing that the decisive moment, the moment where truth would assert dominance over deception, was imminent. And in that silence, thick and suffocating with expectation, Jasmine Crockett paused, allowing her final words to resonate through the chamber. "This is the reckoning, Mr. Trump. There is nowhere left to hide, no narrative left to manipulate, no fear left to wield. Justice is here, accountability is here, and the truth, our truth, cannot be denied." The room exhaled collectively. The verbal battle had reached its zenith. The apex of intellect, courage, and strategy had been achieved. Every observer knew that the struggle had been decisive, not in physical terms, but in the realm of morality, law, and principle. The final confrontation had been fought, the stakes resolved, and the chamber held its collective breath for the echoes of accountability that were about to reverberate far beyond these walls. Trump sat rigidly, his chest heaving slightly, eyes flickering between the committee, the cameras, and Jasmine Crockett. The once unshakable aura of dominance now seemed brittle, fragile under the relentless weight of truth and public scrutiny. His fingers tapped nervously on the polished surface of the table, a subtle tremor betraying the tension he could no longer mask. I suppose, he began, voice faltering, there are elements here that cannot be ignored. The admission was slight, almost whispered, yet it sent a ripple through the chamber. Reporters leaned forward, pens poised, cameras zooming in. The words were more than an acknowledgement. They were a crack in a carefully maintained fortress. Jasmine remained composed, her posture perfect, her expression resolute. She allowed the moment to linger, letting the weight of truth settle across the room. Then, with a measured tone that resonated like a drum beat, she spoke. Acknowledgement is the first step toward accountability, Mr. Trump. Recognition of reality is necessary when actions are examined under the lens of justice. History does not forgive attempts to obscure, manipulate, or intimidate. Today, the evidence, the testimony, and the facts have spoken. The committee members exchanged glances, nodding subtly. Some jotted notes rapidly, others whispered quietly to colleagues. Outside the chamber, journalists updated live feeds. Headlines began trending, and social media erupted with reactions. The public, glued to screens, could sense the magnitude of the moment. A historic unraveling, a rare instance where unyielding truth had prevailed over power and influence. Trump's face tightened. His attempts to interject, to spin, to reclaim the narrative, faltered. Each gesture, each word, met a precise counter from Jasmine, leaving him increasingly exposed. This is not the end, he stammered, but the conviction in his voice lacked the certainty of earlier hours. The faltering was evident, the audience sensing a man cornered not by force, but by principle. Jasmine leaned slightly forward, her gaze unwavering. The end, Mr. Trump, is not in the battle fought here alone, but in the consequences that follow. Leadership is measured not by rhetoric, not by influence, but by integrity. And today that integrity has been upheld. Your attempts to evade responsibility cannot withstand scrutiny when confronted with fact, witness, and record. The room seemed to pulse with intensity. Committee members nodded in affirmation, some exchanging approving glances, while others scribbled notes to ensure nothing was overlooked. Trump's attempts at retort became fragmented, his words now scattered, lacking cohesion or authority. Even the once loyal aides seemed hesitant, unsure how to react to the magnitude of exposure and accountability. Outside, cameras captured the unfolding spectacle. News anchors spoke rapidly, headlines flashed across screens. Historic accountability in the chamber, truth triumphs over power. Crockett's unyielding pursuit of justice shakes the establishment. The public's fascination turned to admiration for Jasmine Crockett, whose calm precision and unwavering courage had dismantled a seemingly invincible figure. Trump's eyes flickered with a mixture of disbelief and frustration. The air in the chamber was thick with finality. He had lost the battle of perception, the duel of rhetoric, and, ultimately, the struggle for credibility. His defenses, once polished and unassailable, now seemed hollow. Every denial, every attempt to spin, every gesture of bluster had been neutralized. Jasmine's voice cut through the silence, steady, deliberate, and commanding. Today is not about one individual, Mr. Trump. It is about justice, accountability, and the principle that no one, regardless of position or power, is above scrutiny. The facts have prevailed, the evidence has triumphed, and the people watching across the nation bear witness to the enduring power of integrity. The committee erupted in subtle applause, a recognition of the culmination of hours of meticulous work and courageous confrontation. The journalists captured every angle, the nation followed breathlessly, and Jasmine Crockett's reputation soared. She had not only defended justice, she had embodied it, her composure and intellect shining in stark contrast to Trump's unraveling. Trump slumped slightly in his chair, the facade of invincibility fully shattered. His eyes darted once more to Jasmine, a silent acknowledgement of defeat, though pride and stubbornness still clung to the edges of his demeanor. The room, charged with energy and the weight of history, reflected a singular truth. The scales of accountability had tipped decisively in favor of justice. For Jasmine, it was a victory not of triumph over an individual, but of principle over deception, truth over manipulation, courage over intimidation. Every measured word, every strategic maneuver, Every piece of evidence had led to this moment, and as the chamber exhaled collectively, the echoes of accountability promised to reverberate far beyond the walls, reminding all that integrity and justice endure. The gavel fell, resonating with finality, signaling the end of a marathon confrontation. A heavy silence lingered as Trump slowly gathered his documents, eyes cast downward, expression tight and unreadable. There were no words, no declarations of defiance, only the quiet shuffle of footsteps as he exited the chamber. The doors closed behind him with a resonant thud, leaving an emptiness that seemed to amplify the weight of what had transpired. Jasmine Crockett remained standing at the center of the room, her presence commanding, yet composed. The evidence had spoken, the testimonies had held, and the battle for accountability had reached its moment of clarity. She allowed herself a brief exhale, subtle but deliberate, as though acknowledging both the intensity of the confrontation and the significance of the outcome. Committee members leaned back, some exchanging reflective glances, others jotting final notes. The journalist's pen slowed, camera still rolling, capturing every nuance of Jasmine's expression, the calm, the resolve, the quiet triumph. Beyond the chamber, live feeds buzzed with breaking headlines, public discourse ignited, and the nation seemed to pause, collectively absorbing the enormity of the moment. Jasmine's reputation, already formidable, had transformed into something larger, something symbolic. She had become a living testament to the power of unwavering principle, intellect, and courage. Her actions that day were not just a defense of facts. They were a demonstration that justice, though tested, could endure even against overwhelming opposition. As she gathered her own notes, a faint murmur of applause arose from some committee members. Tentative at first, then gaining momentum. It was not just recognition of procedural success, but acknowledgement of moral fortitude. Jasmine's ability to maintain composure under pressure, to counter relentless diversion and intimidation, had elevated her to a new plane of authority, both in the chamber and in the eyes of the public. The air was still thick with tension, though now it carried a different weight. The aftermath of resolution rather than anticipation. The echoes of the day's verbal battles, strategic maneuvers, and unyielding pursuit of truth lingered in the minds of all present. Every gesture, every word, every pause had contributed to an enduring narrative. That courage, intellect, and integrity could confront even the most formidable adversary. Outside the chamber, news outlets dissected every moment. Headlines proclaimed justice prevailing, the fallibility of unchecked power exposed, and Jasmine Crockett's steadfast dedication celebrated. Social media feeds overflowed with commentary, analysis, and admiration. Citizens debated, reflected, and shared the story of a woman who had faced down a figure of immense influence and emerged not just victorious, but iconic. Trump's departure left a vacuum, a symbolic retreat from both confrontation and control. The room's atmosphere, once dominated by tension and adversarial energy, now hummed with reflection. The challenge had ended, but the lessons resonated. Integrity had triumphed, power had been held accountable, and the narrative had shifted irrevocably. Jasmine took a final glance around the chamber. There was no gloating in her eyes, only a quiet resolve, a sense of responsibility that stretched beyond the walls of the room. She understood that the work of justice was never truly complete, that the echoes of today's battle would ripple through legal halls, media cycles, and public consciousness for months, perhaps years. Yet she also knew that the standard set, the courage displayed, and the unwavering pursuit of truth had become a beacon, an emblem for those who believed in principle over manipulation, accountability over intimidation. The chamber slowly emptied. Staffers moved deliberately, tidying documents, adjusting cameras, and exchanging subdued comments. Journalists lingered, capturing the final moments, while committee members prepared their concluding notes. Amidst the quiet, Jasmine's presence remained magnetic, her poise a visual testament to the power of reasoned courage. In the halls beyond, whispers of admiration and acknowledgement traveled rapidly. Jasmine Crockett's name became synonymous with resilience and justice. The tension, though now settled, had left an indelible mark. It reminded all who witnessed that the pursuit of truth when wielded with intellect and moral courage, could stand against even the most formidable forces. And while the doors had closed on this chapter, the story's resonance continued to unfold. Viewers, readers, and citizens alike were left with a dual sense of satisfaction and reflection, awed by the triumph of principle, yet mindful that the vigilance required to preserve justice was perpetual. Jasmine Crockett had not only won a battle, she had become a symbol, a reminder, a living emblem of what it meant to confront deception, demand accountability, and embody integrity. The echoes of her courage, the meticulous dismantling of lies, and the unyielding assertion of truth reverberated far beyond the chamber, lingering in the conscience of the nation. And in that resonance, a simple yet profound truth remained. Justice, when pursued with unwavering resolve, endures, and those who embody it inspire generations to come. In a world often swayed by power, influence, and deception, Jasmine Crockett's unwavering pursuit of truth reminds us that courage and integrity are timeless virtues. Justice is not given. It is claimed through patience, intellect, and moral steadfastness. Every act of honesty, every choice to stand for what is right, ripples far beyond the moment, shaping the conscience of society. May we all find the strength to confront falsehoods, uphold fairness, and act with courage. For it is in these choices that humanity's highest potential is realized. If this confrontation stirred something in you, don't scroll. Sit with it. Reflect on it. Talk about it. Like, comment, and share it with someone who still believes accountability matters. Subscribe to Harrison Stories, where truth refuses to be silenced. Hit the bell, because the next battle for justice is coming. And it won't be gentle. It's intense. It's relentless. And it might just change how you see power and responsibility. This story is a fictional dramatization, inspired by real injustices and real courage. Any resemblance to actual people or events is coincidental, or symbolic for public reflection and critique. Thanks for watching. Justice isn't given, it's demanded. This is Harrison Stories.